Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Mirko, just the podcast where we talk with coffee lovers, coffee passionate, coffee professionals, and more. Today we're going all the way to Puerto Rico, so very excited to share this virtual journey with you. And if you're new, just welcome and feel free to take a screenshot and share this podcast with people who would love to hear more and more about it. And we actually have Abner in the house, and we're gonna have a chit chat with him.
Hello. How are you?
Hello, how are you, brother?
Good, and you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for coming here. I know you're a super busy man, and I really appreciate your time and your, just making the effort to be here. So yeah, thank you very much, man. And how are you and your family doing in this crazy situation?
We are doing actually good. Thank you for also for inviting me to be part of this. I saw your guests, and all of them are people that I follow. Most of them are my like from mentors from a distance. There's a lot of people that I follow, and I'm pretty excited to be being part of this. And my family and me, we're doing very good. In this situation, like we have a business, we have a coffee shop, and it's been pretty hard. But we are doing, we are working hard and fighting. I don't know, every day to be, uh, I don't know, as good as we can.
Well, yeah, and I think it's just a very particular situation, and nobody was prepared for, I
No,
suppose.
no,
And
no. When you,
sorry,
yeah,
go.
no. That when you have a business, you think that something like there's something on my mind when I was new in this that something is going to happen today. You go day by day trying to survive that day. Probably the power is going off, the coffee is not going to come, stuff like that. But you never think about something like this. Like closing for so many months and customers not coming because they are in in their homes. So it's been something new, but we are going through.
And that's the right spirit. And Abner, just to give some context to the audience, could you kindly tell us a bit your amazing story and how did you start into coffee?
And I started in coffee 10 years ago, and I was an English teacher in the Department of Education of Puerto Rico. And my wife was a history teacher at that time too. She's in coffee now too. And I used to go to coffee shops, and I was attracted by the cool job behind the bar, and like the latte and also the coffee because I used to drink. I When I met my wife, most of our days were in coffee shops or drinking coffee. So was always interested in coffee. So in 2010, I was a teacher, like I said, and teachers have there's the summers off. So we have a vacation, and we most of the time we don't do anything. Just um, we are free. So I was a regular in this coffee shop in our neighborhood, and I asked the owner if he could give me a job, like doing dishes or whatever, because I wanted to be a part of this culture in coffee. And he said, yeah, yeah, come, like, have a job. And I didn't know anything about coffee, like making coffee. And every day I would ask the baristas, how could I do this? Or how can I prepare espresso? And they would tell me every day some details about coffee. So I remember that every day I would make only one coffee, and it was my coffee. So when I was in school the whole day, I would only think about doing that coffee in the afternoon because I was working from 8 to 3 in the school, and then I would go to the coffee shop in the afternoons. And I was like improving little by little, but it took forever to get better. And in 2013, so I was already working as a barista 2 years. I competed, and I was part-time. I was full-time teacher and part-time barista. So I competed in the Puerto Rican Latin Championship, and I won. And that's when I said I want to do this full-time. I left the teaching job to be a barista full-time because I found a passion in coffee and customer service and being in a coffee shop. I love being in coffee shops. So when I won the national competition, we went to Melbourne, Australia, to compete. And then the next year, I competed again and I won again in Puerto Rico. So that year, in 2014, we went to Sweden, to Gothenburg, to compete. And when I started to travel, I started to see the barista profession as a profession, because in Puerto Rico and most of the places that I've been, barista profession is just like a part-time job for young guy or girl that he's working in just during the college time. So it's just like something that you don't see working for forever. But I decided to, this is what I like. So this is what I'm gonna do forever, I think.
That's such an inspiring story, and thank you for sharing it. And basically, it's funny how you went from teacher to student on that part-time year. And what was really attracting you about, you said that it was like cool, and it's like, you really wanted to be part of that sort of job or community or industry, which is super interesting. And what was the main attraction, I suppose?
I think it was people. I'm an introvert, so it's not hard anymore. It's still hard, but it was harder at that time to meet people, to talk to people, to chit chat, to whatever. And when I started going to coffee shop, then I saw the same people every day. So it was like it helped me to be more, not extrovert, but to be more open, to have conversations, to meet new people, I don't know, yeah. So it was a safe place for me. So I wanted to be part of that. So that's what I like about. I still work in my coffee shop. We have 7, 8 employees, and I still want to go there every day to see people. That's my extrovert time, and
That's
that's what I like.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to catch you.
No.
Yeah, it's super interesting, because I think that it opens up the perspective for people who are more or less introvert, because there's nothing wrong about it. It's more about, you don't have to be this super talkative, extroverted guy necessarily. Like you said, you still need to communicate, but you were able still to learn and make sure that you have enough contact with your customers, and that's really nice. It's just it almost became part of you, which is super nice. And speaking of cafe communion, comunión,
Yeah.
what values and ideas went behind this cafe?
So when I started thinking about the idea of having a coffee shop, it was many years ago, but I didn't want to open it until I knew not everything, but that I had enough experience. And so I wanted to bring something to Puerto Rico that I don't, it's not something new, but something that I saw around the world. So a place that was focused on customer service, hospitality, a place that was focused on consistency, a place that we will respect our customers, that it would not be a place for snob baristas or people that I know more than you. It's a place for people to get something good every day and to feel better after they left their coffee shop. I wanted to make a place like a cliche, but a third place for people that whenever they come after lunch or during the coffee break, they will disconnect from their jobs or their, I don't know, the problems or whatever is happening in their minds, and they will feel welcome. And I wanted to create a whole concept based on making people feel better when they are in communion and also when they leave. And me and my wife decided to travel to be in Portland, in Oregon, because it's one of the best cities for me in the whole world, and especially for coffee. So we went over there, and they are very focused on details. On serving, we don't have to serve a lot of stuff on our menu, but the little stuff that we have is the best stuff that you're gonna get, and it's gonna be good consistently. So Comunión is more focused because in Puerto Rico, when we opened Comunión, coffee shops were more focused on like fast paced chain, like and customers were always in a hurry. Like, oh, I need my coffee now. And I have the same some of the customers that we had in the other coffee shop, that because it's kind of close, and they come in a different, how do you say? They come differently. They can wait more. And when I started Comunion, I would say customers when they had to wait like 7 minutes or 8 minutes for a coffee. Oh, coffee is coming. No, no, I'm okay. So it was something new for me in Puerto Rico, because Puerto Rico is more like in the East Coast in the United States, it's more fast. So for me, it's a place to feel good. I don't know.
No, I think you touch such beautiful elements of it, because I think we often forget. I know a little bit of Spanish, so the word comunión makes a lot of sense to it. But for people who don't, I mean, if it's just the getting together element of coffee, it's really what it's all about. I know that we put a lot of emphasis on quality, on service, but the core, what makes a coffee shop is, the people
Yeah.
serving and the people being served, and it's just all getting together. And it's super interesting, because I'm very privileged to be able to do in this little podcast with people from all over the world and hear different coaches, because I never traveled to Puerto Rico. Like I've heard of it, I've seen it, movies, Google, but I never been there. So it's almost like a chance for me to sort of travel, virtually speaking, and ask locals to sort of tell us how it is. So basically, you were saying how before your shop, it was all about fast pace. And so how was the first impact of you bringing specialty coffee into Puerto Rico from a local point of view?
Sure. The connection. Are you there? Or
Yeah, I'm here. I'm still here. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I think
Yeah.
it's getting better. Yeah.
All right. What was the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. The question was like, how was bringing specialty coffee to Puerto Rico for the locals at the very beginning of it?
Uh, it was not as hard as I thought it was going to be, because Puerto Ricans are very in love with Puerto Rican coffee, and they are very jealous. Like, oh, this is the best coffee in the world. So we brought coffee from other places of the world. So we sometimes we have Puerto Rican coffee, but also we have another grinder with coffee. We serve Onyx, we serve Olympia coffee, some other roasters from the U.S. And we just didn't want to sound like, oh, this is the best coffee ever. We just wanted to be ourselves and make people feel welcome. And this is the coffee that we serve. And then I would ask questions about why this coffee, but I think they got it. They got what we were doing. So we tried not to be pretentious about, because when I go to a lot of coffee shops that I follow, that I buy the coffee online, and then I go to their shops, and it's a very bad experience. Like they, it's usually people are very snob. Like they treat you like you don't know about coffee. I know about coffee. Get this coffee, or this coffee is too good for you. And I hate that kind of environment. So I didn't want to bring this to to my island. I just wanted to be I love coffee, and trust me, this coffee is gonna be good. And if you don't like it, I'm gonna try and find a way to make it you know suitable for you. So people got it, and we are so happy that people come every day.
Absolutely, and I think it's yeah, it's really interesting, and we'll unpack that further for a little bit. Michael Hunt is asking if do you use French press?
In Puerto Rico, a lot of Puerto Ricans use French press. It's very easy to get, but we don't use it at the shop. But it's something very pretty common. Also, the mocha pot and automatic machines. But there's a lot of customers buying espresso machines. But yeah, French presses are very common in Puerto Rico.
And he asked if you got any tips for how to make a good French press.
So I was watching James Hoffman doing a French press, and he was doing something like making it less with less body, like and I haven't used it in a while, but he was trying to do, instead of grinding coarse, like trying to grinding finer and taking the, the the coffee with a spoon. But I will watch James Hoffman video about doing French presses.
Same,
I will
yeah.
watch, yeah, I will Google. I mean, go to YouTube and watch all the videos from James Hoffman.
Yeah, he's one of the best online,
Yeah,
and yeah, for sure, for sure. And yeah, I don't have a French press, so
no,
I don't. Yeah, so yeah, I second you on that one. Yeah, James Hoffman has some good videos.
yeah,
um, Michael, his name is James Hoffman. I'll punch it in here. James Hoffman. Just YouTuber, and yeah, let me know later what you think, because you're gonna find lots of good videos. And Abner, something that you touched base earlier on is how in Puerto Rico and other countries, I can relate to that, even in Italy, becoming a barista is not a profession.
yeah,
And it's funny how you left teaching for becoming a barista, because my mom is a teacher, so I can really relate. It's just like my mom was always about study, 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 study. Um, but then luckily, she also taught me, do what makes you happy, which is, seems sort of what happened to you, which you were like, well, making coffee makes me happy. I'm
yeah.
going to pursue that, which is fantastic. So what sort of advice do you have for people who may be living in a country where becoming a barista is not necessarily seen as a profession, with your experience? Because, I mean, Melbourne, we are very lucky because being a barista in Melbourne, it's considered a profession pretty much. You can really have a full-time job. But in other part of the country, in the world, we're not, it's not like that. So what's your word of advice?
I think that it's about being consistent with what you are doing, um, and planning ahead. Like it's not when you decide to stop being a teacher like me and being a barista. You have to think about in the future. What's your plan? So my plan was to open a coffee shop, but it was not to open a coffee shop now. It was to open a coffee shop maybe in 5, 6 years when I got enough experience. But I have to plan ahead and not just live day by day. I had to talk to my wife and decide. And I said I'm gonna stop being a teacher, and I was, the provider, or not provider, but I was 50-50, provider of an income to our home. So I was gonna earn less being a barista. So I have to start spending less and adjusting our budget for a while. But I did that when I was in my late 20s. So I was like getting into my 30s crisis, like what I'm gonna do with my life, what I'm gonna do in the future. So it was for me. It was like it was the right time that I decided to do this. So I will advise to plan in the, what you want to do with the profession. Do you just want to be a barista, or do you want to have a career in coffee? So if you decide to have a career in coffee, I will get mentors, like people that I know and I don't know. For example, James Hoffman, I have seen him a couple of times in NCA, but I don't know him. But it was for me, he's a mentor because even if I don't know him, I follow whatever he says. I read everything that he does. I get his books. Also, Anthony Bourdain, for me, he's not in coffee, but I related to him. I like what he wrote about. I like what he talks about, and I will follow people like that. So I will try to be more day by day, more like them. So once you continue that path, it's just gonna happen, in the future. So doors are gonna open, and people are gonna take you more seriously. And especially if you want to open your own shop, it's gonna take time because if you want to have an investor, if you want to have a loan, you have to create a career, and because you have to prove those people with money that you know what you are talking about. It's not just something a hobby, and you have to prove them that they're going to ask you a lot of questions. So you have to, I don't know your stuff.
Yeah, and I think you're hitting the nail on that one, especially when it comes to understand what your sub passion is, in the sense of like, okay, you see that coffee is what you want to do, but there's so many little,
Yeah,
so many different roads on it. Some people want to compete, some people want to become businessmen and they want to open up 100 stores and chains. Other people, they just want to be a roaster, they want to become bloggers or photographers, and James Hoffman is a good example actually, because I met him only once, but he does videos on YouTube and he loves it. Like, you can really tell that he loves taking videos on YouTube, despite also having an amazing career and business, but that's his passion. Like,
yeah,
I highly doubt that he would be taking YouTube videos if he didn't like it. So I'm not saying he's a YouTuber, but if you say, if you had to print James Hoffman business card, it would be coffee businessman and YouTuber.
yeah,
So I think it's important to analyze and understand, like you said, plan what you like. And the only way to do so is to start from rock bottom and make your way up. So you have to learn each step all the way. So like you
yeah,
said, you're like, well, I don't mind if I start doing dishes and the only coffee I'm going to make is my own at the start and at the end of the shift, which I think it's the part that underlines the patience element. Most people, they're impatient. They walk in, it's like, I want to become barista, teach me. Well, we need to start from washing dishes and learn
yeah,
where things go and how the shop works and the toast and all the little things. Yeah, so I appreciate what you said. I think it's definitely interesting. And
yeah. Because sorry, not when we started coffee, most of us didn't. We didn't say when we were little, I want to be a barista. We didn't say when they ask us in school, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a barista. No, nobody said that. We Most of us studied something else, like you said, photographers or graphic designers or whatever. So we need to bring all of those professions to the coffee, because it's not just being a barista and not just being a roaster. It's bringing all those qualities and talents that you have to the coffee industry, so you can make it better, and also you can mix your passions, because if you are a photographer, then you can mix coffee and photography. Yeah, that's the if in
yeah,
sometimes yeah, Yeah.
100%. No. I get you, and I think it's super important for sure. And we have a beautiful sentence here by Manuel. Relationship in coffee industry is the key for a successful career in the coffee industry, which is true. It's like you mentioned, having a mentor and having networks. So I think it's important to go to events. It's important to connect with the online community. It's important to reach out. I mean, the way that we got to meet today for the first time is just simply through Instagram, and it took 35 seconds messaging you, hey, I'm doing a podcast, would you like to be part of it? Ciao. Like, and connecting with those mentors has never been easier. And I think, people might be scared of the rejection, or might be scared of, someone might not get back to me, or I'm scared of they're going to say no, or who am I to message this guy or this lady? Reality is, it doesn't matter. Just do it.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised.
Yeah, some people are going to ignore you. Some people, I have wrote, because I also have a podcast, so I have written to some other people, you want to be part of the podcast, and they see it or they don't see it, but I don't care. It's just about, it's creating connections. And some people, it's like in real life, you're not going to be friends with everybody, but you're going to find people that are going to motivate you, because the coffee industry, and especially the coffee industry, is a small industry, it's a small group. So we create these connections, and now it's way easier, like you said, on Instagram. And when you go to the SCA or whatever, now that we are having these meetings online, it's a good motivation for us to continue to grow in the industry.
100%. I appreciate what you said. And Abner, we reached the halfway mark of the podcast, and usually we just ask a ritual question, so the out of the box question. If you could, who would you like to have dinner with? And it can be anyone. Doesn't have to be coffee. It can be coffee. Anyone. That's your guest.
Like, I will have dinner. Like, he's not alive, but I like Anthony Bourdain a lot. So, and I remember when the last time he came to Puerto Rico. I'm sorry about this story, but I used to live. I live in Santurce, in a neighborhood with a lot of bars. So I saw someone that posted that Anthony Bourdain was in a bar, and like maybe 5 minutes walking from my home, and I just left without saying goodbye to my wife, and I left running. That's because I want to see. I know that I will not talk to him, because I didn't even want just to be a fan or whatever, but I just wanted to be close to him. And he wasn't there when I got there, but I would want to sit with him and talk to him, because he was also into punk rock, and he was. I know he was also an introvert, the way that he behaved with people, but you could feel that he had a passion for people and a passion for what he did. And also, I will sit with Ian MacKaye. He's a hardcore punk singer from a band called Minor Threat. So he's been a very big influence for a lot of people, including me.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. No, it's fantastic. It's a little breakthrough question, and I think there are those people that they seem so unreachable, and they seem so far away from us. But I think that, obviously Anthony Bourdain, may he rest in peace, obviously is no longer with us, but sometimes it will surprise you the things that you can do in order to meet the people that you believe, they are really your heroes and influential. And nobody is that far. Like I really believe that. Like I've, for instance, on the podcast, one of the guests that came here a couple of weeks ago, he interviewed twice one of my heroes, which is fantastic. It's like you're almost there. Like it's that close, which is super interesting. How it's just, I don't know. Sometimes we pull our own limits on it, And you're a great example that there is not much limits because you're all the way in Puerto Rico on an island. You were a teacher. Life was sorted, and you're like, wham! I'm just gonna do latte art. I think it's cool, and I think it's gonna represent me more. And there's nothing wrong about teaching. It was more like your core was coffee and people. Ironically, as more like you say, a little bit more introverted, which is it's super interesting. I'm still quite processing that. It really interests me. Now, going back to where we were, like in terms of competing, where are you at with competition? I know obviously you have business, you have family, but what's your plan around competition moving forward?
Moving forward, I think I stopped competing. I've been a judge in the last competitions in Puerto Rico, especially in latte art, and every time I'm in the stage being a judge or whatever, I try, I have the desire to compete again because I like the adrenaline and being in that situation of presenting to judges and being in front of people and doing what I love. But in Puerto Rico, there's a lack of competitions, and right now we only have the latte art one and the coffee English spirit. And they were gonna do the barista competition this year, but the COVID happened and it didn't happen. So, but in the future, also I would like to try to compete in the United States because we are a colony of there. Maybe probably there's a loophole that Puerto Ricans can compete being from Puerto Rico. So I was thinking about doing something like brewers or something like that.
Cool. I think it'll be really cool, and yeah, I'm excited to see that. And now that I just mentioned your family, you have a business with 8 employees, and you have decisions to make, and you're busy, and your wife's also in the industry, which is incredible. But how do you manage the balance between work and family? Because having a young family is not really, it's not easy. I think I lost you for a little bit, but I think I got you back.
It's me or I'm sorry.
No, we're good. You're good to go. I'm not sure if you missed, but I was just asking, how do you manage the balance between business, work, and family? Having a young family, it's not necessarily easy.
It's been hard, but it's been doable because we live a block from the shop. So I open every day, and it's maybe like 1-minute walk to the shop. So Carla also, she's not full time in there because she also works for Sustainable Harvest, a company from Portland, Oregon, and she works online. And she goes like once or twice to the shop to help or to see what's going on. And maybe at noon I come to our apartment and I help with the baby, and then I go back. So I live very close. So it's hard, but it's doable for us. I don't have to drive and then I come back home and drive again. So it's not a very easy situation, but for us, it's a nice experience.
Okay. No, that's good. So I think it's something that maybe sometimes people, they see that as an obstacle because obviously the barista job usually it involves many hours and a lot of work. But you also, it's like I think it also gives flexibility in some countries when it comes to time to work because usually you start earlier and you finish earlier in certain countries, not every country. So yeah. Definitely.
It's not like a bartender. The bartender, they have to be the whole night, and it's really hard for them, I think. But Carla and I are in the same industry, so it helps that we talk about coffee all the time. So whenever we are off on vacation, we still keep talking about coffee, and it helps you to keep you like learning every day and being active in the industry.
And
And
who brews at home?
I am the one. I get my first coffee at the shop, and then the one that I get in the afternoon is in at home. So most of the time, and I brew a little bit for her, but in the morning she brews her own coffee. We have our own settings. She has her coffee bar, and I have my coffee bar. And so, yeah, she's very jealous with her stuff.
Well, fair enough. We don't want to touch this stuff for sure. And
Right.
then and earlier and earlier you mentioned that you're serving Onyx Coffee and other roasters
Yeah.
in the shop. Um, would, would is roasting anything of your interest down the track? Is that something that you kind of that's a milestone to start roasting your own coffee?
Yeah, it's one of our plans, but we haven't talked about it yet because every year there's something going on in Puerto Rico, and now there's something going on in the world. Like we stopped just we stopped thinking about roasting, and we are just flowing with being a multi roaster. But right now we just focus on being having different coffees and roasters. But in Puerto Rico, there's a situation that you cannot import green coffee. You have to just use the green coffee from Puerto Rico. So we don't have enough coffee to supply the demand of all the Puerto Ricans. So the only company or the only one of that that can bring coffee to Puerto Rico, the green coffee, is the government. So you as a company cannot bring green coffee. So for roasters, it's very hard. You have to fight and try to find the little coffee that coffee farmers are producing. I'm talking about specialty coffee. So it's very hard for roasters in here, Jet.
Wow, that's really interesting. I had absolutely zero idea. I mean, I know that for some countries it's easier or harder, but I didn't know that it's pretty much virtually impossible for you to
Yeah, it's
actually
impossible
work right
because we we don't have enough people to pick the coffee, and everybody in Puerto Rico drink coffee. So you know, uh, but we don't have enough Puerto Rican coffee. So the government has to buy coffee from other places, from Mexico, from Colombia. They do auctions every year to buy coffee from different countries and to supply the demand. So they bring this green coffee, but it's not just green, it's semi-roasted coffee. So for example, if Mexico won the auction this year, they're going to supply the demand of coffee in Puerto Rico. But they have to semi-roasted coffee in Mexico and then bring that semi-roasted coffee to Puerto Rico to prevent plagues or whatever that's going to happen to Puerto Rican coffee. So the coffee that we buy from other countries is not. It's just coffee that they don't want. So it's just coffee for supermarkets or commodity coffee.
which
So the
which
special,
makes
yeah,
it hard for you because obviously importing roasted coffee is not necessarily the most financially speaking advantageous
no,
part of it because obviously you gotta pay for big shipping coming
yeah,
through.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So that's what they do. So there's small farms doing specialty coffee, doing pretty good coffee, but with all the hurricanes and all the um, droughts and stuff that happens every year, they don't have enough coffee to supply. So sell, they make more money selling the coffee to people in the United States, like selling bags, filter bags. And if you want to sell good coffee, you don't have a lot of options. So that's why
Mm.
we decided to buy, to get Onyx and other roasters.
Which is also very nice. I mean, financially speaking, might be challenging, but it's also very nice the concept around it because I'm a big fan and I really believe on connecting people with coffee from all over the world. And we do it with wine, right? It's like we all have an Italian or French wine for the sake of the exercise, but in Australia or in America. And I think with coffee, even though the margins are much lower, but it can still be done, and you're a proof of that. I think
Mm.
we can really share the coffee from certain cities with everyone in the world, and yeah, it's interesting. Definitely interesting concept that you have in Puerto Rico, and I really appreciate that. Huh. And speaking of Puerto Rico, what? So you grew up and with your family, or your grandmas or abuelitas, or what,
Yeah.
what coffee and abuelita in Puerto Rico makes at home usually?
But my grandma makes most of the brands are very traditional, Jacono, Cafe Rico. So your grandma will stick with only one brand. That's the only brand that she's gonna buy for the rest of her life, and she's gonna say that that's the best coffee ever, and she's the best doing coffee. And you have to trust her. You have to say, yeah, grandma, abuela, you are the best one. And but having coffee with my family is also a great experience, and also that I wanted to have in the shop, like sitting, because every time you would go to your grandma's house, everybody was in there, and everybody will be part of the ritual of drinking coffee. So my grandma will make coffee in a olla, and she will make coffee in the stove. I forgot the name of it, and she will put sugar, and she will put the milk, so everybody will have the same coffee. So I say, oh, I like the coffee black. No, you have this one. Or I don't want sugar. No, everybody, you don't have an opinion in with the coffee with your abuela. What is with my abuela? So everybody was having the same amount of coffee, and everybody was having the same sugar. So, but it was a great time. And it's still a great time because every time you go to my abuela's house, it's the same experience. So, and she was the only one that would make coffee. But most of them use the mocha pot or also the automatic machine.
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, it's interesting because like I, I I will never or very unlikely experience that myself. So it's interesting that if I have to imagine walking into Puerto Rico house, what coffee I should expect. And yeah, I mean
Yeah,
AJ are baristas and also the coffee sock. So I'm
yeah,
assuming, yeah,
La Vega, yeah.
yeah. So it's very interesting, and obviously, yeah, you can't say no to grandma.
Yeah,
So you take it with sugar, you take it with milk, you take it
yeah.
as it comes. No, that's cool, man. And do you have also an offering for more traditional Puerto Rican coffee in the shop?
Yeah, most of like 50% of the customers they ask for a café con leche. So
Okay.
we don't say we don't you say it's a latte. So and a lot of people use sugar, but uh, it's just a it's just they just ask café con leche, and we just make a latte, and they are happy with it. So
Okay.
yeah,
How would traditionally speaking would come a café con leche?
like what do you mean?
Because is it actually
Café
like a
con leche.
latte, or
Yeah,
in
no,
the regional coffee shop comes differently?
café con leche is just like drip coffee with milk. But for people in Puerto Rico, espresso is just it's something new. So they also think that espresso is café con leche. So some people from like ordering on the house think that if they order an espresso, they're having a café con leche. So when I see somebody like hesitating, like, oh, I want an espresso, I say, oh, do you want with milk or and they don't get offended with the question. If you ask a young guy, oh, no, 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 espresso is just supposed to be without milk. But people like older than us in Puerto Rico, if they order an espresso, because they are used to going to cafeteria and having espresso on the board, and it's a café con leche. So because everybody have drink café con leche. Nobody from the older generation have an issue with milk. So everybody will get cow milk, and just because they don't see coffee separated from milk. And also sugar.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
to have it, and they when there's somebody new that come to the shop, or they were trying to get a coffee and they're not used to specialty coffee, they would order the café con leche, and when you give them the cup, oh, this is your coffee, they say, oh, do you put sugar? They say, why would I put sugar? I don't know you. I've never seen you. It's my first time seeing you. I don't know how many sugars you put in your coffee. Because if you go to a traditional cafeteria, they do the same thing. It's just drink it like that. And so people, when they start to come like as a regular, they notice that this is different. But we don't try them like, oh, you don't know about coffee, go to other place. No, this is the way that we do it in here, and you're welcome to I don't know, learn. I'm gonna try to find a way to make it good for you.
That's super interesting. I think there's a misconception, and usually people think of South and Central America as countries where it's just a lot of black coffee. So that's proven to be wrong. There you go.
Also, if you go to Dominican Republic, also it's the same thing. Also, if you go to Cuba, in Cuba they don't put milk; they use a lot of sugar. If you talk to the Cuban, they're gonna say that they have the strongest coffee ever. But it's just an espresso, the coladito with a lot of sugar. It's more sugar than coffee. So they should not brag about that.
I don't want to get it. Abner, thank you very much. We kind of reaching the tail end of the episode, and I'm super grateful that you made your time in your busy schedule here. Just the last couple of questions, that are a little bit bigger ones. What's your coffee mission? And what's next for you?
My coffee mission is to try to help the coffee industry in Puerto Rico. Even if I'm in here in Puerto Rico for forever, or if I go live in another place, I'm gonna try to not just I don't want to say that I'm gonna be the savior of Puerto Rican coffee or whatever. I just want to help. I just want to. Obviously have my business and make it last forever, but I just want to help the coffee industry in Puerto Rico. And what was the other question?
What's next? What's next for you? As in on your planet, with coffee, and what's next on the agenda?
The pandemic changed a lot of plans, but we're thinking about opening other shops, but we don't know yet where to open them, if in Puerto Rico or outside. But I want to have more Café Comunions, and I would like to be certified as a trainer for the SCA. Carla is doing that on sensory. So she's been certified. When she ends, then I'm gonna try to be certified as a barista, because we would like to open a school, coffee school in Puerto Rico, because we as teachers, we have also a passion for teaching. So we see ourselves having more communions and also having a school.
So the teaching element is still present.
Yeah.
I love it. And just a quick one to wrap it up. Obviously now the economy and the tourism is highly impacted by bans, and people are not allowed to travel that much. But how nice is to see sometimes, I'm asking tourists coming and visiting your shop and feeling familiar with your offering and with your shop, and how nice it is for you that you're able maybe to interact and having different conversations around coffee that you may not be able to have, like you were saying, because there's some locals who still just drink their coffee the way they want to drink it. So how nice is for you that's with the tourist element in the coffee shop?
You say tourists?
Yeah, with tourists, yeah.
Tourists. There's a lot of coffee involved tourists coming to our shop. And somebody said that they don't hear me. Do you hear me? Or
I hear you fantastically.
Okay, cool. So it has helped us to be on Sprout, on Barista Magazine, because there's a lot of people that come to our shop and say, I just came to Puerto Rico and I Googled or I went to Sprout and you guys are in there. So there's a lot of coffee connoisseurs or whatever.
Connoisseur,
yeah, connoisseur, yeah, coming to Puerto Rico. So it makes me happy because they ask you the right questions and they are happy to find a place to drink good coffee in Puerto Rico. And then I tell them, go to the other places, because there's also a good coffee community in Puerto Rico. And there's a lot of great baristas, and I know that I think they feel better in drinking coffee in Puerto Rico than whenever they come from. So right now we are seeing more people, like more tourists coming to Ireland, because we have a lack of them, because nobody was traveling, and it was good for us, because to contain the COVID. But it makes me happy to see people from the States and also from Europe and Latin America coming to our shop, and specifically coming to see us, coming to meet us. And it's really great. Yeah.
Look, if I'm ever able to travel again, and if I'm able to come to Puerto Rico, you'll be my first stop for sure, my friend.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been super nice to meet you and having a chat with you. And I hope that we can share a cafecito soon, one day, in Melbourne, in Europe, in Puerto Rico, anywhere in the world. And thank you so much for your time, and I really, really appreciate it, man.
And thank you for your patience. English is not my first language, so.
You were an English teacher, so it made sense.
Yeah, but you have a different accent. But thank you for inviting me and for giving a Puerto Rican the opportunity to talk to the world about us, because a lot of people don't know that we have coffee in Puerto Rico. We grow coffee in Puerto Rico, and when they talk about United States coffee, they don't mention us, and then when they talk about Latin American coffee, they don't mention us. So it's like we are in the middle of this political situation that people forget about us, and people like you that give us a time and a place to express ourselves make us very grateful.
Now, thank you for sharing. I think it's super. I think everyone has a story, so regardless of what industry we're in, and I wish that I could, interview every single person living in the world, but that's pretty much impossible. That would mean, 7 billion episodes instead of just, 88. But I think it's important that we just sit down and listen to everyone's stories, because your story is really, really inspiring, but not just for me, but it's also inspiring for some of your neighbor countries or someone who lives in your country, and it just puts things in perspective. And again, I think it's just a reason to get together, like a podcast communion, in the sense of listening, respecting, appreciating, and creating a space where people can, really have a good vibes and just living with like one thing to think about. Let's say just one, or to add value to them. So in this case, so many, you went from teaching to coffee, but now you want to teach coffee. You went all the way competing. You have so many elements, and I really appreciate your story, and it was my pleasure. Thank you so much, and I think the best way to close it is that Jesus Manuel saying Carla is the Puerto Rican coffee queen. There you go. So.
Saludos a todos, a Jesús, a Edgar, a Ana, saludos.
Ok.
Yeah.
Muchas gracias. Cuídate. Hasta luego y
Bye.
nos vemos.
Bye.
Chao.
Gracias. Chao.